Good evening, everyone. This is Curtis. Hope everyone is doing well. A lot going on in the world, but hopefully you all are maintaining. I want to do a video today on the Manosphere. The Manosphere has seemingly come back into the news due to the stolen election, because the election was stolen by Donald Trump via the electronic voting machines. The stolen election has enabled the manosphere to come back into the news. A lot of news articles have talked about how Trump really did well with the mail vote due to reaching out to different manosphere influencers. And it's interesting because I remember first being exposed to the manosphere years ago. Because with the manosphere, it's like you hear certain talking points. Beta male, alpha male, cuck, all these silly ass talking points. So I first heard about, the alpha male. I was like, what the fuck is that? I never heard of this term, at all. And it kind of came from, a friend of mine who's very conservative leaning. And, I always thought it was kind of stupid, because I'm like, okay, being a dominant male is not a good thing. Those guys are assholes. Those guys destroy the world. Those guys harm their families and harm women. So, what are we talking about here? Why is that such a good thing? But, it is a thing. You hear, this so-called manosphere language all over the news media now. You hear it on Fox News, you'll hear it on podcasts. And I think the whole idea is that, somehow, feminism, and I guess really feminism, or i.e. women, have made the modern man weak. They've made the modern male a beta male, and someone who, is not strong and tough and is wimpy, which is all bullshit. Um, Men in the society raised under white supremacist capitalist patriarchy do deal with a lot of things. But those things are not the fault of women or feminism. And I'll expound upon that later. But essentially, this whole movement, a lot of this stuff, I feel like kind of became a more extreme version of the men's rights movement, which, again, I have some familiarity with, due to reading a book by the name of No More Mr. Nice Guy, which talks about a lot of the legitimate issues and traumas that a lot of men deal with. I don't necessarily agree with all the points in the book, but I do feel as though it talks about men who struggle with people pleasing, which is something that I used to struggle with. And it was a result of childhood trauma and a variety of other factors. And again, I understand that, yes, there are things about society, where men aren't always privileged in every single area, whether it's circumcision, and again, it's not to say that this is the fault of women. It's not. But there are legitimate things that happen to men in society. The fact that millions of men get raped in the military, and that this barely gets any discussion. That is a prime example. But again, that's the result of patriarchy, not of feminism. So this manosphere shit kind of, it's become an extreme version of some of the men's rights movement, which which was very problematic, in many respects as well too, because again, it was kind of like an anti-feminist movement. Everything was the fault of feminism. When the reality is that most men around the world are dying and being killed or killing themselves as a result of patriarchy, unfortunately. So, but the manosphere, they are like anti-women, and men need to be in control, and all these beta males are kind of ruining society, making men weak and feminizing men, all this nonsense. And of course, particularly for white men, being the perpetual victims. And when I say perpetual victims for white men, I'm talking about how white men, even though they've conquered, genocided the entire world, they always feel like they're, that they are being attacked. Anytime someone wants to challenge their authority, their power, they're being attacked. It's been that way ever since, the Declaration of Independence, when, Thomas Jefferson, a person, a white supremacist, uh, enslaving pedophile, an enslaving pedophile, was, creating a narrative that the white settlers were somehow victims of the Native Americans. If you read the actual original document of the Declaration of Independence, the one, I think there's two copies. The one I think that maybe it's like found in the National Archives, not the original draft, but in the original draft, he kind of comes after black folks rebelling and Native Americans attacking the white settlers. So again, you kind of see this narrative of white men always being victims. So yeah, so for white men, who grow up in society, of course, all that manosphere nonsense is going to appeal to them. I think it harkens back to the popularity of football. Back in 1900s, as America had conquered North America, it was now hell bent on conquering the rest of the world. It was this narrative that men were weak and being feminized, and we need to toughen up men. So that's where they came up with football. A sport that is a blood sport that has killed, hundreds of men probably throughout the years since it's been around. But the sport was kind of pushed on men to kind of toughen them up and to reinvigorate white masculinity, and make white men tough. So, they'll have no problem committing genocide in the Philippines or in Cuba or in Puerto Rico, etc. So, a lot of this stuff kind of, has some history. But now, with the advent of the women's rights movement, coming out of the 60s, we now have, I guess, the modern day iteration of men are too weak. We need to strengthen men and maintain the patriarchy. That's what the manosphere is. And, it's very disheartening to see a lot of black men get into this nonsense. You have people like Kevin Samuels, who was a con artist. He was a lifestyle coach, who realized that, hey, there's a lot of single, unhappy, traumatized black men out there. So let me kind of, make up some bullshit, to kind of, appeal to their sense of weakened manhood and appeal to their legitimate loneliness and maybe struggles with women. Yeah, Kevin Sam, I remember the first time I heard about the fool. A friend of mine told me about him, and high value, man. I was like, this sounds like some nonsense. I was like, first of all, most black men, just by racism are not going to be so-called high value. They're not going to be making a whole bunch of money. So the idea that, this is something that we should aspire to is just, it just seemed like one of those carrot sticks that was being sold to, to steal brothers' money. And essentially that's what he was doing. He was putting out all that bullshit to steal black men's money, and then, he eventually died himself. So his advice didn't really help him out. And of course he was always single. So, it's unfortunate to see a lot of, black men get into some of this white manosphere nonsense, because again, this is just basically more kind of nationalistic kind of Nazi, machismo. Because the Nazis, they were, very hell bent on, the Aryan man is weak due to the Jew and the gays. We need to, reassert, the Aryan male dominance. So, and again, these white men are hell bent on doing that. That's Trump's whole agenda. His agenda has never been about the economy or the price of eggs. It's always been about white supremacy, particularly white male supremacy. That's why he's putting all these, pedophiles and rapists into his cabinet. He himself is a pedophile and a rapist. So, so this whole movement has nothing to do with black men whatsoever. But it's unfortunate to see that, some black men are kind of, latching on to this nonsense and really kind of adopting the talking points, which will not and are not going to serve them. So first thing is that, as I mentioned, the manosphere, white nationalism. Now you might say, oh, well, it's led by, a biracial man by the name of Andrew Tate. who probably consider himself to be white. Every time I see Andrew Tate, he's always kind of saying some white supremacist shit. So I think one of his father was a CIA agent. So, and this guy is a sex trafficker. He's a pimp. He's a con artist. He's a cult leader. This is not a person you want to aspire to be, but if you watch some of his videos and podcast interviews that he's on, he's always talking to white nationalists, i.e. Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson, he's, good buddies with the Trump administration. So, who cares, just because it has, Fresh and Fit and, Andrew Tate doesn't mean that this is like, like a all encompassing male movement. This is a white male movement. And this is about, advancing the power, which white males already have monopoly of, advancing the power, the profits, and the privilege, of straight white men. So that's what this whole manosphere is about. Now, again, oftentimes they'll take kind of legitimate issues that men have, whether it's, a man having a hard time meeting or attracting women, or a hard time, they might lack social skills, they might have a lot of anxiety, and all of those things are legitimate. Those are things that, could be related to childhood trauma, could be related to, the fact that a lot of men are circumcised. It could be related to a myriad of factors that have nothing to do with, the rise of feminism and beta maleness. But, they talk to men about these issues, and they kind of reel them in, and, it's a Ponzi scheme. So they reel them in, with these legitimate issues, and then they kind of bring them over to the right with all this kind of right-wing, white nationalist bullshit. So, that's how it starts, and then you kind of get, so-called red pilled, and you're just talking nonsense. So that's what happens for a lot of men, because, a lot of men are unemployed. They are single, they have anxiety. A lot of kind of traditional gender roles are being challenged. A lot of, the whole idea of gender, is something that, is not as, I would say, traditional as it used to be, because you have people who are trans, and the like, or who are queer. So, a lot of men just kind of, feel like, they don't know who to be. Because again, a lot of men, we're kind of taught, society teaches us to be a certain way, to be tough and to fuck a whole bunch of women, and, and not take no disrespect, and to be violent, so, when you're kind of seeing images of men not doing that, or you're seeing, men kind of struggle with, suicide, or, struggling to get a job, or, a whole host of factors, of societal factors, economic factors, then a lot of men kind of feel like, they don't know where to go, and increasingly, a lot of men are online, they're watching YouTube, they're on social media, and the algorithms are promoting these fools to them. They're promoting Kevin Samuels and Andrew Tate, and Tucker Carlson, and Donald Trump. That's what gets promoted to men. Because the algorithm figures, okay, well, this is what men are going to consume, and the more they consume this, the more it benefits big tech. So, men kind of get pushed down into this rabbit hole, and then some just never get out of that shit. But also I do feel like, a lot of this again is a backlash to, to women's rights, because again, men, one thing that all men can, one universal male experience is essentially, learning how to be a misogynist. For most of us, that's, we learned that shit when we came out the womb. We learned that God was a man, a woman came from the bone of a man. We learned like misogyny, we're watching pornography, we're watching, TV. So we're learning, that women are inferior. So, naturally, here comes, some manosphere fool talking kind of the same, male superiority bullshit, and we kind of get sucked into it, but along with that, as I mentioned, there are, there are nuances. So, there are some ways in which men aren't always, particularly white men, aren't always, experiencing, their white male privilege card. They're not maybe making as much money as, their ancestors used to make. They don't have as much control and dominance of the household like their ancestors used to have. So, for a lot of white men, they feel like they've lost something, when the reality is that, these things weren't, were not necessarily inherently good in the first place. It's not good to be dominant, to be a patriarch. That's not a good thing. That's an asshole. That's an abuser. Oftentimes that's a pedophile. That's a rapist. But again, for a lot of men, because things have changed rapidly, and I would argue that oftentimes, another key aspect of that is that sometimes, a lot of gendered roles are still expected of men. Oftentimes, when men are dating, they're still expected to be the provider and the protector. But women are not expected to be, I guess the domestic or to be submissive, which again, women should not be that. They should not be expected to be those things. But I would also argue in some respects that, it's not necessarily inherently fair that men in all cases, because I know there is a pay disparity gap and the like, but in all cases, men should not, it should not be automatically expected that men are to be providers and protectors, because even that is patriarchy. And there's a whole, really dark history behind that. But again, so, a lot of men, they're just trying to figure out who they are, because again, we're kind of socialized to be, to really kind of, get into this whole manhood shit. A lot of us really, we're not really in tune with our humanity. We're not in tune with ourselves because of our childhood trauma. I can resonate with that because, I've dealt with a lot of trauma myself. So a lot of us, are trying to be something to gain value. And that's what I would say about the so-called modern man. But again, for a lot of men, that leads them into a very dark path of them kind of into this, getting into all this manosphere stuff. And particularly, the very interesting thing about all this stuff is that, these white manosphere people, they are very like pro genocide, like other non-white men. So, these manosphere motherfuckers have nothing to say about the genocide in Gaza. All the men who are being slaughtered in Gaza. Nothing to say about all the men who are being, murdered by the police every single year. Nothing to say about mass incarceration, all the, men being put in prison. Nothing to say about, all the factories that are put in inner city communities, that are polluting toxins, that are harming men's mental health. So as much as, these fools talk about all this manosphere shit, like they are very much like committed to men's rights and men's privilege for one group of people who like represents less than like 2% of the entire male population. So is this really a manosphere or is this like kind of like a clanosphere? Is it a manosphere or is it a clanosphere? And I'm here to say it's a goddamn clanosphere. All this manosphere, men's rights, these are all white nationalists. They care nothing about black men, nothing about Latino men, nothing about Asian men. They consider all you men to be beta males or submissive males. So that's why, for someone like Donald Trump, this fool, he commits genocide on black men. He called for 5 innocent black men, to be put to death. Behind, and again, you hear all these men's rights people talk about, oh yeah, all these false rape accusations. Well, hey, how come these men's rights people are defending Donald Trump? Who is trying to have, a bunch of young men, young boys rather, excuse me, put to death behind a false rape charge, from NYPD. That's disturbing. So that's why, there's no such thing as, as the black manosphere or, AKA clanosphere. No such thing. Again, I mean, a lot of these black manosphere influences are just leading black men over to the right, where, the right is white and the white wants to kill off the black man. They may talk, they may talk about feminism, and they might even have some legitimate critiques of white feminism. They might have, they might talk about those things, but again, doesn't mean that they are black men's allies. They're not. white men, over the course of 600 years have proven not to be black men's allies. So that, their own little battles between white women are kind of like, something separate from the black struggle. But again, I get it, black men, in particular, like, hey, we've been sterilized, castrated, enslaved, raped, buck broken, stopped and frisked, brainwashed, miseducated. We black men in many respects are at the bottom of the barrel. We have the lowest life expectancy. We're being killed by some of our intimate partners. We're being sexually assaulted in prison. We're being falsely accused of crimes. We're being put to death when we're innocent. So for a lot of brothers out there, I get it. It's like, we've been stripped of everything. We've been stripped of every single thing. So the only thing we really have to hold on to is this manhood shit. And when we feel like that's being attacked, we kind of latch on to kind of some of this like kind of right wing, anti-women shit, out of our trauma and out of our really, our kind of programming. Because again, as I said, all men, whether you're a black man or not, again, we've been kind of taught to hate women as well too. We've been taught to hate black women. Come on, come on, Like we don't listen to gangster rap back in the day. These, man, misogyny. These nappy head. Come on now. We can't act like that has no effect upon us. We were, most of us spent hours and hours listening to that shit, dancing to that shit. It's affected us. And then here comes, some smooth looking brother like Kevin Samuels saying, yeah, these low value black women bringing down the black community. What are we talking about? And shout out to Tommy Curry. A lot of his work I agree with, and I feel like more brothers should get exposed to his work instead of going down this whole this manosphere nonsense. But along with that, we should understand how patriarchy works. Because if you don't understand patriarchy as men, everything else will confuse you. And that's a play on Neely Fuller. May he rest in peace. If you don't understand racism and white supremacy, everything else will confuse you. It works the exact same way with patriarchy. Patriarchy is the fact that men, black men are getting raped in prison. That's patriarchy. That's happening because, of them trying to create hierarchies in prison, hierarchies of dominance. Because one thing about masculinity is that it's not just about dominating women, it's about dominating other men who you could seem to be weaker than you. Check out the film. It's by Byron Hertz on hip hop. I think it's called Hip Hop Beyond Beats and Rhymes. You ever notice, brothers, we always, using term, bitch, pussy, we love to use that term to feminize other men. So again, that's very much part of manhood. So, of course, what's the most ultimate way to feminize a man than to sexually assault him? That's patriarchy. So black men have, all this shit about we need more patriarchy in the black community. That's nonsense. Black men have not experienced not one iota benefit from patriarchy. Now, again, a lot of us, a lot of us may, we may uphold, we may have patriarchal values, patriarchal mindset, and have some male privilege in some respects. But again, like overall, again, it's a hierarchy. White men at the top, black men at the bottom. And black men oftentimes targeted because we are men by the white society, because we are considered to be threats, because we are, outgroup males, as they say. So yes, so it's important, in this moment, as fascism is upon us, that, black men in particular reject patriarchy. I'm not saying you got to be like a, run around, being a card carrying feminist. I'm not saying that, but you must reject patriarchy. You must reject misogyny. You must reject hatred of black women. And again, you can still stand up for black men. You could still advocate for black men and black boys. You could still point out some of the ways in which they're targeted. That all that's fine and dandy. The problem with a lot of people, I feel like, in the modern day world, is that there's no fucking nuance with people. It's either you're this or you're that. It's like, goddamn, well, I mean, how come I just can't stand on business? How come, I just can't stand on fairness? Okay, like, why does it gotta be like I'm an anti-black male, I'm against anti-black male misandry, but they don't have nothing to say about patriarchy and the assault of women. It's like, goddamn. Like, why can't we just be about justice? Why can't we just be about, equality? Because and again, that's why I say you have to understand patriarchy, because women definitely do, it harms them, but also does harm men as well too, particularly black men. So a lot of problems that we face, and that black men face, whether it's suicide, homicide, I could do a whole book, and I empathize with black men. I understand, I had a lot of trauma. I dealt with, domestic violence. I've been stopped by the police, countless times. I have been falsely accused by white girls of crimes I didn't commit. So I understand what it's like to be a black male in America. And I understand that sometimes, we're not always granted the amount of empathy that I feel as though we deserve. I understand that. But, doesn't mean that we have to side with, our white male oppressors and their kind of oppressive ideologies, which are harming them. Look at some of these manosphere people. One thing I say, particularly, people who really into that manosphere shit, it's really a scam designed to keep men broke, single, and sexually starved. I'll say it again. The manosphere is a scam to keep men broke, single, and sexually starved, so the scam can continue. It's just like church. Church always, religion always claims to fix people, but it does nothing to fix people. So motherfuckers got to keep going back, hoping to get fixing. It's the exact same shit. Manosphere don't fix no problems for men, particularly not for black men. It keeps us, single, and having these unrealistic expectations of black women. Because real talk. Most white women, they ain't. You try to go to the, average white woman, talk all that manosphere shit. She gonna look at you like you a fool, and then call the cops on you. She ain't gonna tolerate that shit. Get the fuck out of my face. But a lot of black. Oh yeah, we think, that, we're on to some shit, by adopting some of this nonsense, and and then we're still single. But again, that's the game plan, because these manosphere influencers want to scam you and steal more of your money. And I know, again, it's like, and a lot of the black manosphere people, they're slick, because oftentimes, people like Umar Johnson, they kind of add a Pan-African or a pro-black twist to it. People like him and Tariq, used to be a pimp and a pickup artist. They have like a little pro-black kind of twist to it, and they kind of weaponize, some of some of the homophobia that's, amongst black men. Again, not to say black men are homophobic. That's not to say that black men are homophobic, or that's a huge thing in the black male community. But it's there, again, as a result of modern society. Again, we were raised that way. We were raised under religion. We were raised, that those kind of men are bad. And to be a real man is to not be that. That's how, all of us are products of our environment. Much as we think we have free thought, and and we can think things out, and we're, whatever. Like, no, most of us are products of our environment. So, if we were raised, by a homophobic parent or with a homophobic religion, we're gonna be homophobic. That's just the way it is. So, they weaponize that. And talk about all these, oh, the black men's being feminized and da 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 da. And then here they come with all this, all this kind of bad dating advice. That's keeping you brothers single. And you can't fucking mingle. So again, it's, black men are the targets of the Trump administration. Period. He may talk a lot about immigrants. He may talk a lot about trans folks and LGBT folks, but it's black men. This cracker executed nearly 5 black men when he was in office. He put them to death. His whole career has been about targeting black men. He exploits black men. He thinks we're a bunch of imbeciles. That's why he promotes people like Herschel Walker and Kodak Black and all these other, imbeciles. Trump has that whole Trump has that whole enslaving mentality where he sees black men, as beasts to be controlled and exploited for his own gain. So don't get it twisted. When he talks about immunity for the police, he means genocide is legal, against black men. When he says bring back stop and frisk, he means sexually assault and rape black men. Because that's what stop and frisk is. It's a way to dehumanize and sexually assault black men and traumatize us, to buck break us, literally. Because during some of these, searches, they're actually raping black men. Eric Garner, before he was murdered by the police, was raped by NYPD during a strip search. So again, black men are the target. Black men don't get caught up in all this, anti-immigrant, and again, most of the immigrants he's targeting are men. So he's coming after black male immigrants. When he's talking about, they're eating they're eating animals, he's talking about black men eating animals. He's saying you're a bunch of, he's saying you guys are a bunch of animals, who eat other animals. He wants to bring back a death penalty. He's already trying to transfer a mentally ill, and someone who has impaired mental capacities from federal prison back to Oklahoma to be put to death. That was one of the first executive orders he signed. Now, of course, media, they talk about, some of the, maybe some of the more culture war stuff about the trans stuff. And again, all that's valid and legitimate. But they don't talk about, again, he pardoned, cops that killed black men in D.C. His first executive order he signed was to bring back the death penalty. And that's basically bringing back public lynchings of black men, where black men are getting tortured and being choked to death in the midst of them dying. So don't fall for all the anti-feminist, all this, anti-feminist, anti-LGBT manosphere nonsense. Because the game is to kill black men and to get rid of us. So understand what's going on. I'm going to post some links, for you all to read and to learn and to study. And, and for anyone out there, 'cause I know there's a lot of, black men out there who are dealing with trauma, who, might be dealing with anxiety. I had an anxiety disorder for a long time. I've struggled with OCD for almost 20 years. So I know what it's like to have anxiety. I know what it's like to be like afraid to talk to women and, to even be in situations where you feel like, hey, women, there's been some women in your life, rather, that have unfairly victimized you. And, people might have laughed at you. I've experienced all that. But the solution to all those legitimate issues is not to go over to, more of this kind of male bullshit trauma bonding that's, oftentimes get you killed. Because I watched one of the BBC documentaries talking about Andrew Tate, how he was bringing, because it's so funny about the Manosphere too, is that, it's like, you're a beta male if you kind of like, you're a beta male if like if you give in to women, if a woman bosses you around, oh, you're a beta male, but but you're not a beta male if like some dumbass man is telling you what to do. That's the most fascinating thing ever about a lot of this kind of alpha male nonsense. Basically, if you are a cult follower of Andrew Tate, of Tariq, of Umar, oh, you're unapologetically African beta, alpha male. If you're a cult follower of these scam artists, but somehow, like, if a woman asks you to take out a trash or rub her feet, oh, you're just a liberal cuck. What the fuck? What the fuck? What? This is mind control. I mean, again, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's like, it's like, a lot of these so-called alpha male, like, these were war criminals who committed genocide during the Holocaust because they were given orders and did not question those orders. And a lot of motherfuckers got themselves killed too because of Hitler's stupid ass. So, man, particularly the black men, definitely, it's okay to be vulnerable, and I feel like a lot of us are going to have to start really thinking about this whole notion of manhood too, and really kind of seeing how a lot of this man box we're put into doesn't really serve us, and it really keeps us away from our humanity, and puts us into situations that we aren't always comfortable with, which is fine. It's like the idea that that we have to like be like these protectors, and it's like I mean that could be stressful. A lot of men who think like that, they work those hard jobs and get themselves killed. Because these white capitalists, white male capitalists, don't give a fuck about you. You're just an expendable commodity, as you were during slavery. So, but beyond that, I think definitely let's really kind of start to look about a lot of our traumas and take some responsibility for our lives. Doesn't mean we haven't been victimized. We have, but we have to kind of begin to just look within, and kind of really be honest with ourselves. Like, hey, I was really hurt as a child, or I wish my daddy was there. I wish my mom was more nurturing. I mean, it's time for us to kind of be more honest about some of those things. Rather than kind of have this whole tough guys going on all the time. So, anywho, hope everyone's doing good. Look forward to posting another video here soon, and take care.